the country right now because I think I've been there. But honestly, a lot of this came with just that good old-fashioned human connection of sitting down and having a conversation like this, saying, you know what, you're a Punjabi man. Tell me about your community. Who were the kind of women that inspired you? And maybe you tell me it was your grandmother. Maybe you tell me it was Amrita Preeta. Maybe you tell me something else. And it was a lot of that. And I've had those conversations over cups of chai in the most unlikely places, believe you me. In playgrounds, in railway stations, in all sorts of places, but just to say, and who inspired you?
And these people that you spoke to, did you zero down on these focused people, or they were just organically what came your way? I mean, did you go about it in a very structured kind of way? Did you say that, okay, let me speak to men over 40, women under 25? I don't know.
I wish I was as organized as that. I really wish I was as organized as that, but it wasn't. It was like I was saying, just the good old-fashioned organic way of saying, tell me about someone who moved you. Now, I can't tell you that every single time someone told me about someone, it made it to the book. It didn't. Many of those didn't come through because they were factually inaccurate. I'm actually very proud of the fact-checking on this book. We have checked, double-checked, and triple-checked everything that's in this book, and I hope to God we've been on the right side of things, but we're very proud of that. And I think Scholastic and I worked as a team as that to make sure that everything was correct. So going back to that, so sometimes someone would tell me a story that wouldn't pan out factually, right? And then I couldn't include that in the book. But then they would tell me stories that did work out. So for instance, I was talking to someone from the Dalit community who said, similar kind of conversation, saying, who's inspired you, or tell me something. And he says, have you heard about this woman called Darshan Hiranandani? And in my ignorance, I hadn't. So I go back home and I look her up. Now here's a woman, she was born in 1912, so over 100 years ago. At that time in the Dalit community, you weren't allowed to cover your shoulders because you weren't allowed to cover your shoulders with cloth. You could only wear grass or beads to cover your shoulders. She tells her mom, she's a little girl at this point, she tells her mom, I'm going to go to school, covering my shoulders, and I'm going to school. Mother says, what do you mean? They'll throw sticks and stones. And she says, sure. And she did. So for 2 hours, she has to take a boat to go to school and then walk for 2 hours. She does that, covering her shoulders, goes on to school, finishes her school career. She says, I want to go on to college. She gets to college. At that time, her upper class teacher says, well, I can't teach you because, I can't teach you. And this woman stands at the doorway of her college for 3 years, becomes the first woman in the Dalit community to get a college degree, then goes on to become one of the youngest people to draft the Constitution of India. And someone like me had never heard of her. So that's an example of a phenomenal, and what's unfortunate is that many of us who, call ourselves evolved and educated have heard about, she didn't sit down at the back of the bus. But we've had our own Rosa Parks in India. And we've just missed out. And so that's an example, Gauri, of a wonderful woman who I perhaps would not have heard about had I not had that conversation. And that came from just a good old-fashioned conversation.
Did you actually get to meet, obviously, you can't meet the older ones, obviously. But,
Time machine.
Did you get to meet some families? Did you get to meet the